Hey folks, this is Caleb with the Dust Bowl Catholic, and I've got a review of a new book from Ascension Press, and we have the author sit down with us for an interview. Let's get right to it. Folks, so I'm here with Andrea Zachman with a new book that she just put out with Ascension Press called The Sacred That Surrounds Us. And she has graciously decided to sit here and tell us all about herself and the process of making this book. And it's a beautiful book, first of all, I wanted to tell you.
Thank you.
You know, the pictures and the writing, of course, and then historical references. And you learn things through this. But really, tell me about yourself and what was the impetus behind this?
So I am a convert to the faith, 12 years now.
Very good.
And when I first became Catholic, it was by convenience. My husband was a Catholic, and we were going to get married, and so I really wasn't practicing anything at all. So it was, why not become Catholic? And so after a few years of practicing my faith without putting my heart behind it, I finally had that wake up moment, right? That moment where you're like, I have to get all in. I have to actually find out what I should be believing. And so I had that moment about 4 years into my faith. And thanks be to God, I found Catholic Lighthouse CDs. I found Catholic radio. I just devoured every Catholic book I can find. I delved right into the Church Fathers. They were so amazing just to read and hear about them and to know that this was not just a faith that is now. This was a faith 2,000 years ago, and that was huge for me. And so after about 4 years, I started to actually walk in my faith and instead of just walking through it. And so now, 12 years after my conversion on Easter Sunday, I am sitting here and I have this wonderful book that was able to come to life after the first initial meeting with one of my friends, Julie. She and I were talking about her son who was making his first Holy Communion. And I said, what can I get him? You know, I want to get him something to celebrate this. And she said, well, what I want to get him, it doesn't exist. I can't find it anywhere. And I said, well, what do you want to get him? And she said, well, there's lots of books on the Mass. There's beautiful books on the Mass. Why we do what we do, why we say what we say, the order of the Mass, all of that, prayers of the Mass. But there isn't anything out there that helps to explain the beauty that's around us. So when he says, Mama, what's that? I can't answer him.
Right.
I have to search multiple sources just to find the answer and, dig a little deeper. And so I want something that I can read or that he can read or something that's going to shed light on all of these questions that he has, because he wants to know what that stuff is up there or over there. And he wants to know why it's in our church, why it matters. And so that was the kind of jumping off point.
Okay.
Start for this.
So while making this book, what was the thing that jumped out at you? What surprised you that you learned?
Yeah, so there are so many items that's used in our sacraments, in our liturgy. I think the one that surprised me the most was the nave, I think.
Okay.
The nave is where all the pews are, right? That's where we sit, and that's where we experience most of the Mass. That was the biggest shocker for me, because until just a few hundred years ago, there were no pews in the nave.
Right.
So to me, I was reading that and I looked over at my husband and said, do you realize that there were no pews in our churches just a few hundred years ago? Where did people sit? They sat on the ground. You had to keep your children with you. And going even farther back, men and women sat separately,
right,
which carried over from the Jewish synagogues. So just to go back in time and experience how the earlier Christians experienced Mass was really fun for me. Really fun. So
wow, that's amazing. So all right. So the pictures in here, as I said, are gorgeous. So where were these pictures taken? How did that work?
Yeah, so the original manuscript had my own church here in St. Michael, but the Ascension team, after meeting, we kind of met to try and figure out, so what church is actually going to be in the final product.
Mm-hmm.
And two churches were actually captured in this beautiful book. St. Joseph's Church in Downingtown, Pennsylvania, and St. Peter's Church in West Brandywine. So those are the two churches that are exquisite and just beautiful with their sacred objects. So I was very happy. I love our church, and I love how sacred and beautiful our church is.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad that what was captured in the book, to me, is just as beautiful and sacred.
Very good. Very good. So, I noticed that, and I'll be putting more of these pictures up, but along with the write-ups, there were historical quotes as well. So, like here's one from St. Cyril of Jerusalem. There's also scripture quotes from Matthew and St. Justin Martyr, things like that. And they fit with the descriptions and the pictures as well. So, where did you find all these quotes?
Yeah. So the original manuscript had just the picture, the word, and the definition, because, as I said, I was writing it for a first communicant.
Right. Very simple.
I was writing it for a 7-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I sent it into Ascension, they said, we love it. There's nothing out there like this. But let's think, what else can we include that will help someone to really fall in love with what they're encountering in the Mass and in the sacraments? And obviously that's the historical context. When did these items first show up in our liturgy, in our churches, and also the symbolism? Why does it matter? Why should I reverence that as a sacred object? Why should I put my heart behind it? Because is it just pretty? Is it functional? Or is it more? So that symbolism of why it matters. And then for the items, it has either an early church quote or a biblical quote. There are a few modern saint quotes, mm-hmm. but I really have a love for the early church.
Right.
The early church is just, it's huge for me. So in my early conversion, after converting, the Fathers Know Best by Jimmy Akin, the Mass of the Early Christians by Mike Aquilina, the Four Witnesses, those were all such catalysts in helping me to fall in love with this faith that I had taken on years prior, because it's so nice to see that what I believe, it didn't just start now. I mean, it was apostolic.
Right.
And it's just beautiful. And so those were all very important things to add in to my original concept. And so I was very happy that it all just really flowed of helping people to really get an overarching encompass of what each item is, but in a very simple way, where I just took the essential, the rich, and maybe that will be a jumping point for other people as they read, and they can see, you know what, that's really interesting. I want to find out more, because there is so much more information. I am bound by the page limit and the word limit, mm-hmm. but there's so much information out there, and this might be just a beautiful starting point for some people. It may be a middle point for people who know about these items, but they want to know more. That's the beauty of it, and I'm just very happy of the format that you mentioned. Yeah, the format was great. So, what's interesting is a lot of this could even be used in an apologetic sort of way, because a lot of your quotes predate even the canon of the Bible, in the 300s. So when, potentially somebody who, as we used to be, a Protestant, would say, well, when did they use this kind of thing? Well, you can point to it and you say, look, this has been done for over 1,000 years kind of thing. So very interesting.
I've gone through here, and as you are, I'm a convert. I took the deep dive in, and I knew a lot of these, but one that I learned about was the aspersorium and the aspergillum. Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't know what those were called, but I knew that they were used during the asperges, in the Latin mass rituals. Sprinkling everybody, and that's a way of cleansing yourself before the mass begins. So it was really neat to learn little things in here. And as you said, this is good for first communicants. I would think if a church has the resources, anybody who goes through their RCIA program needs one of these, I think, so that you can learn. Yeah.
Yeah, the RCA candidates and catechumens, this would be an amazing resource. Your confirmation families,
Yes.
right? Your
Yes.
first communion families. We're telling these children, and we're telling our parents. I'm the faith formation coordinator, so
Okay.
I do everything pre-K to 5th grade at our church.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm telling the first communicants, we want you at our family meal every Sunday at least. And I'm telling the parents this needs to be a priority, and you need to make this commitment as a family to make this journey every week. And, taking your child to their sacrament of their first Holy Communion means you're making that commitment as a family.
Right.
But when our children don't know what's going on, or our adults don't know what it is that's even around them, this is I think would be a really good resource, because it helps them to wrap their head and wrap their hearts around why it matters, and
Mm-hmm.
why it's more than just something pretty or more than just a functional table. These are sacred items, and Holy Mother Church knows how to really draw us in, right? How to help us to fall in love and bring us to a deeper meaning within our liturgies with the items that can be found in our churches. And so just having an understanding of that going to Mass would be huge for our sacrament families too.
Right.
And then, your daily Mass goers too, the ones who they might see a chalice and a paten every day if they go to Mass, but maybe they don't know the history behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe they don't know the symbolism of why the church thinks that this is something that should be reverenced as sacred because of this reason. And so even they would get something out of this book.
Definitely. Well, folks, here's the book again. The name is The Sacred That Surrounds Us, from Ascension Press, by Miss Andrea Zachman.
Yes.
And I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on with us. And folks, be sure to go out and order this. It is available, has been available since late last week, and at Ascension Press, of course. And thank you again for spending time with us.
And thank you so much to everybody who's watching. And I pray that whether it's with this book or some other resources, there's so much beautiful resources out there. Really, walk in your faith and really wrap your heart around what you are encountering every weekend at least, and more if you go to Mass more. But we are really taken into the divine, and we have such an amazing thing available in our Catholic churches. So really try and enter into that sacredness. So thank you again, everybody, and God bless you all.
Thank you. Hey folks, I hope you enjoyed our talk with Andrea. Go check out her book. Like I said, you can get it at Ascension Press, and it's been available since just late last week. Hope you come back next week. Please be sure to subscribe, like, comment, and share with your buddies. And until next time, be not afraid.